If you've seen Riftbound on Tabletop Simulator in the past, you might have seen something like this. It wasn't the most pretty thing in the world, but it allowed us to play Riftbound as early as possible. As soon as I realized how much I loved playing Riftbound, I knew that I was going to want a more robust version of this mod sometime in the future, and since they finally announced the official name as Riftbound, and they had a crazy update to the card frames of the game, I knew it was time for the Tabletop Simulator mod to also get a big upgrade. First of all, before we get into the big upgrade, if you haven't heard of Tabletop Simulator before, or you don't know what it is, Tabletop Simulator is a physics engine that lets you play tabletop games in a digital environment. If you can name a tabletop game or a physical game, you can probably bet that it's on Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator mods have varying degrees of quality. Some Tabletop Simulator mods have crazy scripted elements that add 3D models to environments that you wouldn't even think possible. And other Tabletop Simulator mods are just a bunch of PNGs thrown onto the physics engine, letting you throw around cards to play physical card games that you wouldn't be able to play in a digital environment if it wasn't for Tabletop Simulator. The old version of the Tabletop Simulator mod that I made was much closer to that, what I just described, a bunch of PNGs thrown onto a table. There was some cool scripting stuff going on, like, for example, if we had a card here and we had it exhausted, we could hit ready and it would re-ready. That's kind of cool, right? But we had to do an upgrade. I'm actually so happy with how this came together. Originally, I had a friend of mine helping me out with this. His name is Wolfie. You can see him listed here in the credits alongside the community Discord and all that. And this wouldn't have been possible without him, so I really do appreciate everything that he did for the project. But I had to go through and redo a lot of what the original vision was, because I continued to add features. So let's go over all of those features, because if we don't talk about them, I'm going to feel bad about all the time I spent working on it. Before we get into any of those features though, let's quickly show you how to download this mod. So if you've never downloaded a game on Tabletop Simulator before, or if you've never downloaded a mod from any workshop game before, here's how you would do it. Click on the workshop button. This will take you to the workshop. It will show you all the different mods for the game that are currently available. Obviously, this is a bit pedantic to go ahead and find Riftbound. For me to find Riftbound, I just go to files you've posted and I can find it there. But if you wanted to find Riftbound, you would just type in Riftbound and you'll see the mod that I've created here. You can always identify that it's the correct mod based on, well, the star rating will help a little bit. But if you click into it, you'll see that it's by Willow. And you can always just look at the current number of subscribers. Generally, if there's over 1,000 subscribers, you can assume that it's probably the correct mod. Once you're there, you just want to hit subscribe. I'm not going to hit unsubscribe because I don't even know what happens when you do that to one of your own mods. And then when you want to load the game later, you want to go into games, and then you'll see a list of all of your games that you currently have downloaded, or all of your mods you currently have downloaded. Just click on that mod, and then it will load you into the game. I'm already in the game, but just as an example, you'll see that it loads. You'll see all those scripting zones, all those white boxes. There's a lot of scripting stuff going on in this mod, so but they'll quickly disappear. And yeah, let's go over all of the features that are on the table. The first thing you might notice is that, oh, where are all the cards? Previously, all the cards were off here to the left. Where have they gone? They've just disappeared. Well, to get cards, now there's a couple ways to do it. The main way you're going to do it is with the deck importer. This is linking to a website called Piltover Archive. I'll talk a bit more about Piltover Archive once I've gone over some of the features here, but Piltover Archive has been really awesome for setting up this version of the mod. It wouldn't have been possible without them. Let's assume for a second you don't want to make a constructed deck. You're just playing your first game, you just want to try out the game. I would recommend, instead of going to piltoverarchive.com, clicking on one of these trial deck buttons. So if you click on Jinx, for example, it's going to copy and paste a code into here. This code is actually much longer than what it looks like here. If I use the notebook, I can show you how long it actually is. That's how long the deck code actually is. If we hit import deck, what's going to happen is all of those cards are going to start spawning over at your board. You'll see there's your full main deck there, your full rune deck there, and your full battlefield deck here. And your legend has spawned in the legend spot. And 2 champion cards have spawned in your champion slot. The reason 2 spawn here is because in the case of Jinx, you have 2 different options in the deck. Only 1 copy of each card will be added here. You'll notice that in the default version of the Jinx deck, there is still another 2 copies of Red Jinx that weren't added to this slot. That's just because the script is accounting for multiple copies and saying, I actually don't want both of those copies, I only want 1 copy to go to the champion slot, because obviously there's not much of a choice between these 3 Red Jinxes, so there's no reason to add all 3 of those copies to that pile. So 2 of those will go to the deck, and then 1 of them will go to this champion slot. And in the case of Jinx Rebel, there's only 1 copy in the deck anyway, but it goes there. This is true of all of the champions that have 2. So in the case of Bear, if we clear that and import Bear's deck, you'll see that both Imposing Volibear and Furious Volibear went here as well. I will in the future add a broadcast message to let you know that you summoned 2 champions, just in case you forgot. We want to make sure that you're not starting the game with 38 cards in your deck. Just for those who are curious, for characters like Yasuo, who only have 1 chosen champion, obviously we only put 1 chosen champion there. You've also probably noticed that the artwork of the playmat is changing as well. But let's say, for example, the trial decks aren't enough for us. We want hardcore constructed decks. Well, then we would go to piltoverarchive.com, which will be linked in the description, and you can find it linked in the notepad of the Tabletop Simulator mod. And from here, you could go to decks, and you could find decks that other people have already made. This website only just recently went live, so you're currently only going to find a couple decks, mostly made by me because I added all of the trial decks. But you can see other people like Gale and Icer here. And you could just click on one of our decks. You could go, let's say you wanted to play, this is a bad example because that's the trial deck. Let's say, for example, you wanted to play my Volibear ramp deck. This is my Volibear ramp deck. You would click on this. You've got a handful of options here, but obviously the one you're looking for is copy for TTS. So that would copy it to my clipboard. And then I would take that same link, post it in here. Oops, not V, Control V. Hit import, and you'll watch all of those cards spawn in their correct spots. And there you go. That is my Volibear ramp list. If you wanted to build your own deck, you would just hit start building. I would recommend creating an account first so that you can save this. You'll see that I'm set up as an admin because I intend to be contributing to this website a decent amount. Let's say, for example, we wanted to build, I'll just quickly build a Victor deck because it's the easiest one to build. We click on Victor. We would then go to the Battlefields tab, and then we would say, let's say we want Trifarian War Camp, we want Altar of Unity, and then we want Targons. Then we would go to the main deck. We would just add whatever cards we want. I'll speed through this real quick. Now that I've added all my main deck cards, I would go to runes. Make sure we add some runes. We'll do like a 7-5 split, I guess. And then from here, you can go ahead and save it to the website if you want, or you can just click this export button. And then from export, you want to hit the drop-down menu and hit Tabletop Simulator and generate Tabletop Simulator. You'll see the big code here. Go ahead and copy that. And then without having to save the deck to Piltover Archive, I can go ahead and import it like that. One thing to remember that's really nice about saving the deck to the website itself is if in the future I want to make any edits to that deck, I can just go to My Decks, and let's say I wanted to change my Victor deck for some reason, I would then go to Open in Deck Builder, then it would open in a new tab, the exact deck that was there, this time in the Deck Builder, and then I can choose to change whatever I want about the deck. Let's say, for example, I want to cut a couple copies of Grand Stratagem. I'm not sure why I would want to do that. Let's say that's what I wanted to do. I would just come down here and then click Save Deck again. And then that way in the future, when I want to export this deck into Tabletop Simulator, I just have to come to my Riftbound archive account, Piltover archive account, excuse me, and export the deck from there. Okay, so now that we know how to get cards, let's go over some of the Tabletop Simulator features that'll help you get started. Let's make sure we've spawned in a deck for everybody. We've got a Victor player there, so let's get a Jinx player here. We want a Volibear player here, and the Yasuo player here. The first thing you want to do, once everybody is set up, everybody has all of their cards in their correct slots, you want to go over to one of these 2 battlefield buttons. You have the determined you have the determined turn order button, and then the gold version of the button is determined turn order and randomized battlefields. What it does is it randomly decides who will be going first, and then it adds a battlefield to each of the respective battlefields for everybody besides that player who's going first, which is per the game rules, that's what it should be doing. So if we click this button, whoever it says is going to go first, that player won't have a battlefield added. So it says green is going first, and if we check red, they only have 2 cards in their battlefields, 2 in yellow, 2 in pink, and then 3 in green, because green didn't add a card to the battlefield, because of course green didn't add a battlefield, because they're going to be going first. If you wanted to manually select your battlefields because you're playing a best of 3 or something, instead of clicking this gold button, you would click the white button, which is just now going to alert everybody that yellow will be playing first, and then everybody else would manually add their battlefields besides yellow. Obviously, everything's a bit different in 1 versus 1. In 1 versus 1, if you're just playing a best of 1, you would still do the random button, and it would work just fine. And or you would do the random just turn order button, and that would also work just fine. As for managing your cards, there's a bunch of different things that you might want to know, especially if you're new to Tabletop Simulator. So let's go over some of those features. First of all, whenever you draw cards from your deck, don't bother right-clicking and hitting draw, which I've seen quite a few people do, especially who are new to Tabletop Simulator. The main reason I would recommend not doing this is because it's very easy to accidentally click deal, and if you click deal, everyone's going to get 1 card from your deck, which is obviously not what you want. So instead, just press the number on your keyboard equal to the number of cards you want to draw. So if I want to press 1 card, I would press 1. If I want to draw 4 card, I would draw 4. If I wanted to draw 4 cards, I would press 4. The one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is avoid double tapping, because if you press 1 twice, that will input as 11. So I just drew 11 cards because I pressed 1 too quickly. So let's say this is my opening hand. It's a little bit of a silly hand, but let's say this is my opening hand, and I wanted to mulligan 2. Let's say I don't want these rebukes. It's not good in my matchup. I would take these 2 cards. I would put them here in this zone here. If you read this icon, it'll say recycle / mulligan to main deck. Place card here and then press button. So we'll place the 2 cards we want to recycle, and we'll go ahead and press the button, and it will go to the bottom of the deck. A similar thing happens with runes. Once we put runes in this slot, first of all, the card's going to automatically rotate for us, which is convenient. But it's also going to add a button to the top of the card. If we click that button, it'll recycle the card to the bottom of the deck. It also alerts everybody in the chat that you have indeed recycled a Chaos Rune. It's kind of hard to keep track of what you've recycled and what you haven't sometimes, so just having that record in the chat can be helpful. Speaking of which, when you gain your 5th point, whenever you gain any number of points, it alerts the chat so you can keep track of whether or not you've gained points this turn, because whenever a turn ends on Tabletop Simulator, it alerts the chat and says, hey, player 2's turn now. So now if player 2 was to score, player 2 doesn't have to think about, oh, did I take that point for Conquer? Did I take that point for Hold? They can always just look at the chat and calculate it from there. Once you reach your 5th point, it's going to alert everybody at the table, hey, the pink player is at 5 points. They just need 3 more points to win. That threshold of 5 points is really important to keep in mind for free-for-all games, because once a player is at 5 points, and just 3 points away from winning the game, they can win all of those points in a single turn. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. And then the same thing happens when you go to 6, because in a 1v1 game, the same thing is true. Once they're 2 points away from victory, they can do it all in a single turn. And of course, when you go to 7, it alerts everybody, hey, this person's at 7 points. Whenever you place a card in an area, it's automatically going to start resizing that area if it runs out of room. So in this case, these 3 runes are going to fit here just perfectly. But if we add a 4th rune, there's not going to be much room for it. So the game will automatically resize that for us. The same thing will happen when we add a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and this will happen infinitely. This is all thanks to that friend of mine, Wolfie, that I was speaking about earlier. This feature would not have been possible without him. All the heavy lifting came from him on that feature, and I really do appreciate it, because without him, basically this version of the mod wouldn't be possible, because I think this is probably the most important feature. Even though there are a lot of features here, this is definitely a huge quality of life improvement, because we can add a lot more cards in a single space, and it makes a huge difference with managing the board. If you add a unit to any space on the field, whether it be your own base or a battlefield, there'll be a counter keeping track of the amount of might here. This will only reference the base printed might value of the card. So Chemtech Enforcer is a 2 might card. If we move Chemtech Enforcer to a battlefield, so in this case we'll move it here, you'll see that the might counter is there. Chemtech Enforcer does have an ability that says Assault 2. He has +2 might. This is temporary might, is not printed on the card itself, meaning that we're not keeping track of this automatically. This is something that you'll need to remind yourself of whenever Chemtech Enforcer is involved in combat. If you have a lot of units at the board and then you are to lose this battlefield, it's kind of annoying to click and drag everything out one by one. And because of the way that the table works, it's kind of difficult to pick up all 4 and then drag them to your trash. It's just not really something that's fixable. So the real fix to this is we've got a little trash icon here. If you click this, it'll automatically take all your cards to your trash zone. Sorry, I clicked that for the pink player. I was resolving this as though I was the green player, but obviously I'm currently pink. If you ever want to read a battlefield, because obviously these battlefields are really small, a lot of players, they'll like try to do this zoom in thing and be like, okay, it says when you defend here. That's not gonna, no one's got time for that, okay? If you hover over the card and hold Alt, you can see a zoomed in version of the card. By default, it's gonna be like this big. It's kind of hard to read. So if you use your scroll wheel, you'll be able to see a more zoomed in version of the card. And from there, it should be pretty readable. If that's still not good enough for you, if you hover over the card, at least for a long enough time, it'll display the card's text there for you. I've just manually set that up as a description for the card. And the same thing is true as of any card. So let's say our opponent has this Furious Volley Bear. We want to know what it does. We can hold Alt to see a big version of the card, or we can just hover over the card for a certain period of time, and then it'll show us the text of that card right there as well. Right now, I'm the pink player, so if I try to put a card in the green slot of a battlefield, it'll move it to the pink area because the game knows that I'm playing pink, so I have no business putting my cards here. This is just to help visually differentiate whose cards are whose. When playing a free-for-all game, it can get a little bit messy determining like whose Volley Bear is that, or whose whose Legion Rearguard is that. And this kind of divide of where the colors are helps visually represent whose cards are whose. Because of this system, though, if you're teaching somebody to play the game who hasn't played the game before, try not to touch their cards. Because if you do touch their cards, let's say for example, I'm yellow and I'm teaching green how to play. I'm teaching pink how to play the game. I shouldn't touch his volley bear to show off what I'm trying to explain to him, because if I touch it, the game's going to be like, oh, this card is supposed to be in the yellow area because the yellow player touched it. If you want to communicate to somebody something about a card without having to touch it, I'd recommend one of two things. If you press tab in Tabletop Simulator, it'll ping that location. You should be familiar with pings if you're a League of Legends player. As soon as you press tab, it's going to make that sound and then obviously point in a certain direction. But if you hold tab, you can click and drag in an area to point a line. I like to do this whenever I'm casting a spell. Like if I cast a removal spell, I'm sure there's going to be one here. Yeah, here we go, Stormbringer. If I cast Stormbringer, I like to click and drag an arrow to be like, oh, I'm going to this battlefield. Or because Stormbringer, it's like a unit goes to a battlefield, I usually like, here's another feature we haven't showed off. When you put a spell in your base, it'll automatically go to your trash because that's obviously where it belongs. So I would cast that spell and then I would click and drag my arrow and be like, hey, my volley bear is going to come to this Sigil of the Storm. So, do with that what you will. It's just a nice visual clarity for other people who maybe aren't as familiar with Tabletop Simulator or maybe aren't as familiar with the game. When you're teaching them, it's nice to do things like that because it's a nice visual communication of what's happening. Or if I was to cast like challenge or something, I would do that, and then I would like click and drag the line and be like, all right, my volley bear is challenging your volley bear. In this case, that would be a very silly thing to do, but it works. There are definitely some features and things that I want to clean up, but for the most part, the Tabletop Simulator mod is better than it's ever been, and I'm super proud of where it is right now. If you have any feature requests or any bugs you want to talk about, please let me know in the community Discord. I hope to see you on the community Discord talking about Riftbound, and I definitely hope to see you on the Tabletop Simulator mod checking out the game if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Keep being awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.